Aloha, everyone. Welcome to week two. And we have this lecture is lecture four called Appropriating the Pagan. We're going to do a short sort of comparison, high level comparison between Native Oceanic religion and Christianity. Now, when missionaries get to Oceania, including Hawaii, right? They are very quick to sort of label the people that they are um, trying to convert, and the labels that they give us are things like pagan, brute, uncivilized, savage, right? And all of these things are important to remember. The first big difference between Christianity and Oceanic religion is polytheism. Native traditional religion believed in polytheism, which is believing in many gods. In fact, we are told by Kamako that we had over 40,000 gods. Another big difference between Christianity and Native Oceanic religion is animism. So, animism means that you consider everything around you to be an animate object, to have life force, to have mana, uh, so that even the rocks and the animals, the insects, they all have mana. This word akua means God, and in this image, we have what we call ki'i. Yes, and that's where the word tiki comes from. Depending on which language you say it in, it's the same word. So, our gods, again, we had very, very many of them. And it's important to realize that that is a very, very different worldview than the missionaries that were coming over at this time. This word, kinolo, everybody say that, kinolo. Perfect. All right. Kino is an alternative body form. So most of our gods had alternative body forms, kind of like shape shifting, if you will. And in this image, you can see a octopus, which is one of the Kino of our ocean god Kanaloa. Most of our gods did have Kino. So if we let's talk about Pele, right? Pele, her Kino is an old lady, a very beautiful lady. She can also appear as, think about all the Pele stories, right? Um, well, also lava itself is considered Pele. And in fact, the word lava is not a Hawaiian word. We don't have the word for lava in Hawaiian is pele. So you can see just by what we call it that this is a manifestation of Pele. It's one of her kinolo, one of her body forms. Aumakua are like guardian spirits. They are attached to particular families. So, for instance, my husband's family, their Aumakua is the honu or the turtle. Um, my Aumakua is the Eva, which is a one of the ocean birds. We have hawks and owls that are also Aumakua. It's important to realize when I was growing up, the surfer boys all used to say, "Oh, I don't need to worry about sharks because my Aumakua is the shark." Yeah, no, that's not how it works. Okay, if you have an Aumakua, it's not all the sharks in the ocean, right? Back in the day, during traditional times, it would have been a particular shark that you would have taken care of, you would have fed, and given offerings to. And because of this, you would have a relationship your whole life with this particular aumakua. And that's really important to realize because when we learn about kakua'ai, you will see that this relationship with the aumakua is really dependent on a sense of responsibility and a long-standing relationship with them. Okay, so while Native religions are considered polytheistic. Christianity is considered monotheistic, right? There's one true God. That God is all knowing, all powerful, all good. Um, yeah, Native Hawaiian gods, our traditional gods, are definitely different than that in quite a few ways. So monotheism, right? When you think about the Christian God, very different than our native gods. One of the huge differences is think about the creation stories that we've already gone over. You have, it's not like the Christian God, where the Christian God is creating everything, right? One God creating all of the creatures. That's simply not the case with Hawaiian religion. In native oceanic religions, uh, remember, you have male and female entities coming together and having children and offspring that then are either male or female, and using sexual activity end up procreating um, the next generations. Again, very very different than Christianity, right? Another big difference is that while the Christian God is all good, um, our gods have definite personalities. If you know any of the Pele stories, you will be able to think about what are her personality traits, right? In many of our mo'olelo, she is quick to anger. She's very jealous and very vengeful. Our mo'olelo that have to do with our akua or gods are filled with um, emotions that people actually, the same emotions that we have, are exhibited by our akua. Again, this is a very different idea than if you compare these religions to Christianity. This image really reminds us that missionaries get here, and it's the same all over the world. Many times missionaries come and they are the beginning of the colonization process. Okay. They might not be the colonizers themselves, but oftentimes the countries that they represent end up being a colonizing force in these areas that they come to. Now, in Hawaii, the missionaries that come here come from the New England area of America. And they, they happen to be the first ones that get here, and they have pretty much exclusive access to Hawaiians for quite some time. But they aren't the only ones that come into Oceania, right? You've got Mormons that come in, all kinds of different missionaries that come in. Here in Hawaii, it's their children. It's the missionaries' children that end up being the owners of the largest businesses here eventually, things like all the plantations. It's that next generation that ends up really pushing the colonizing piece here in Hawaii. Another way that native oceanic religion is different than Christianity, right, is that with Christianity, like if we use the missionaries that come to Oceania as an example, there is this sense of competitiveness between the different missionaries. First of all, right? There's this little bit of a rivalry going on, trying to gain access to different parts of Oceania the quickest. Another big difference is it has to do with Hawaiian worldview. Okay, you know, we, even though they Kamakau says we had 40,000 gods, we never. There's no mo'olelo that talk about how people are like, oh, our gods are better than your gods, and you know, people definitely worshipped different gods, um, and usually these things went in families. If you were a farmer, you worship particular gods. Particular families worship particular gods. If you were a fisherman, you worship different gods. And so this is why there were so many. Now, unlike Christianity, I'm not picking on Christianity, it's just one religion that most of us are familiar with. It's quite different because instead of people saying, don't worship your gods, you should worship mine, it's a lot different. Hawaiian people traditionally were more sort of protective of their gods, kind of like, okay, we have our gods. You don't need to look at our gods. Like you got your own thing going on over there. And this is how, we didn't have religious wars about whose gods were the best, right? Um, and this is really different than most places in the world. If you consider what happens globally, if you consider what happens globally, right, there are religious wars that have been fought for hundreds of years that are still going on today. Okay, that is just simply not the same as the Hawaiian worldview, in which people were protective of their own gods. There were lots of gods. They didn't feel the need to argue about whose gods were best. And therefore, there was no trying to convert other people to worship your gods. All right, that's it for this lecture. Um, have a great day and thanks for paying attention. Aloha.